India signed non-binding agreement for a merger. The merger agreement indicates more power to Reliance Group. Reliance to hold 51% stake, Disney to get remaining 49% in the merged entity. In a first, India pays for crude oil in Rupee. Indian Oil Corporation makes payments for purchase of millions of barrels of crude oil from Abu Dhabi National Oil Company in Indian currency. And India goes the SIP route in 2023. Systematic investment plans. AUM jumps 38% in 2023. SIP's total share in mutual funds assets clock 19%. Credit growth in rural India stays stagnant. Share of bank credit to rural India at 7.7% compared to 62% in metros in 2023. And Paytm fires over 1,000 employees in an effort to reduce cost and realign its businesses. The job cut to impact 10% of Paytm's workforce. All those stories right here on News 9. With me is Amit Ranjan in the studio today. For a change, Amit, a very good morning. The biggest story, in fact, that we are tracking at the top of this hour, which is the Reliance-Disney India deal. A non-binding agreement we now know of that we've been talking about has been signed between Reliance and Disney. The merger is expected to be complete by February of 2024. The merged entity will have greater power assigned to Reliance Group. The Reliance Group, we know, will hold about 51% of the share. At least those are the details that are coming out. Disney will get 49% of that merged entity. Both of them will invest billions of dollars in this deal. This deal is likely to create one of the biggest entertainment entity in the country, bigger than what Sony would create.
Way bigger. And apart from the might of Viacom 18 and Star India and Disney, is the parties are expected to invest 1 to 1.5 billion into this new venture. It's going to be a duopoly play, and with this they will also be competing big with their Disney Plus Hotstar, with the likes of Amazon and Netflix.
All right, with the likes of Amazon and Netflix. Now, I think it's very interesting to note that we don't know whether Sony merger is likely to go through or not, but about 40% of the market share in the entertainment sector in India is likely to be captured by the virtue of this deal. Now, Reliance is hoping that they'll be able to finish and sign the dotted lines by February of 2024. In fact, January of 2024 is what they're targeting at the moment, yes. But February of 2024 is when the deal is likely to go through. Now, it's very interesting because, as I mentioned, the merged agreement indicates there'll be more power to Reliance Group. What does it mean for Reliance Group? If you could go further, read into what's going to come by the way of this deal. Reliance's OTT platforms, which include your Jio Cinema and Disney Hotstar, will become a part of this deal. Now, Viacom 18, a subsidiary will be created within Viacom 18, which will then get Star India's operational responsibility. So entire Star India network will be then managed by Viacom 18 deal, which is likely to be a 51-49% split between Reliance Industries and Disney India. It is interesting because this deal will offer more entertainment avenues for people who have been waiting for perhaps newer OTT shows. Will get more entertainment virtue by the virtue of this deal. Now, Viacom 18, a subsidiary of Reliance, as I said, will be absorbing Star India through a stock swap. Both Reliance and Disney will invest over 1.5 billion in the deal, and the deal is likely to come through by February of 2024. We'll be creating India's biggest entertainment empires. Now, there is no update by what's going to happen as far as the Sony deal is concerned. The deadline has expired, but nothing further because Sony refused to further extend the deadline. So we don't know whether that deadline has gone through or will be extended further. So there is a status quo there.
Yeah, but if market forces are allowed to play, this deal would trigger a catalyst effect on that one. Okay. Because they need to come together. If they have to fight the might of these two. Reliance, as it is, was a big player, and they are known to be disruptors when they took on Viacom 18. With Star India coming together with them, and they having most of the sports rights as is, Zee and Sony, the only route left for them is to come together.
Now,
so, like I said, if market forces are allowed to play.
Now, we know as of December 19 that the deadline for the deal between Zee and Sony has not been extended. There is nothing that has come in by the way of Sony India. Sony India, in fact, said that they want to hear Zee's proposal before the extension, but that hasn't happened. Meanwhile, there is more, in fact, happening in the entertainment space by the way of the Disney Hotstar. Remember, Disney Hotstar, which has been battling with financial woes, had been looking for a partnership, a JV, or someone to buy them out. This deal will mean that Disney Hotstar will be able to sustain and carry on with its operations, although by a way of a deal which will ensure that there is a duopoly perhaps going forward in the market. More than 40% of the market share expected to be taken by this merged entity, which will come into fruition as of February of 2024. But shifting focus to a story which is auguring well for India by the way of India's payment for crude oil. It now appears that India has made the first tranche of its payment for crude oil in rupee. In fact, the Indian Oil Corporation has made payments for the purchase of over millions of barrels of crude oil from Abu Dhabi National Oil Company in Indian currency. So there is some uptick for Indian currency as far as payments for oil is concerned.
There was a logjam because India had upped their purchases from Russia. And Russia, as it is, was grappling with too much of Indian currency for a long time. And there were, we had done stories also on them. There were suggestions that they can invest that money back in India. So therefore, India was not able to pay Russia for their oil anymore in rupees because they were not accepting. So the only other option left for them was other currencies. This comes as a good silver lining that now they are starting to pay for crude oil from other nations in Indian rupees.
All right. You know, this is also interesting because this has come a day after Indian government told in the parliament that in financial year 22-23, not a single payment for any tranche of oil was made in rupee at all. So this led to a flurry of news items in media which stated that India's push for crude oil imports in rupee or India's effort for de-dollarization seemed to have hit a roadblock as far as 22-23 is concerned. There's a clarification that has come in from the government at this point in time that despite no uptick in Indian rupee or buying oil in Indian rupee in the year gone by, this financial year has seen some sort of a change because a deal that was signed between Saudi Arabia and India in July of this year has come to some sort of fruition with Saudi Arabia finally paying for that oil, Abu Dhabi finally paying for that oil in rupees. So as far as global supplies have remained resistant towards receiving rupee payments. This is as per Indian government's reply in Parliament. Now, despite all of that, it appears that millions of barrels of crude oil that were bought from Abu Dhabi National Oil Company were paid in Indian rupee and not in dollars. Good news coming in for India as far as its efforts for de-dollarization is concerned. But with that, it's time for a short, quick commercial break. We'll be back in just a bit.
जब हम करेंगे तो पता लग ही जाएगा सलमान खान का करेंगे मारेंगे या जोधपुर में मारेंगे तो पता लग जाएगा
This is someone who is sitting inside our jails and is still very obviously and openly running and possibly the largest organized criminal operation in the country.
Student organization of Punjab University में सोपू का acting president type भी रहा है.
He was a troublemaker, getting into fights with people, not coming to the class.
As on date, it appears that Lawrence gang is the most important, the prominent gang. Gangs here in Punjab, they are intimidated.
Today, he's India's most dangerous gangster, and India's prisons are apparently no bar to how Bishnoi runs India's largest criminal empire.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
It was my 14th birthday.
On birthday, daughter waits
for missing father.
He was carrying a cake for his daughter.
49-year-old Birmingham-based
Indian diplomat vanishes.
He was grabbed and bundled into a car by 4 assailants.
KLA claims responsibility demands Kashmiri separatists.
Bhatt's release.
गोली मारो उसे, गोली मारो और फेंक दो.
And within 3 days, they shot him dead.
Abducted diplomat.
Found murdered in Leicestershire.
I said, who ordered to kill him? To me, he said, yes, I ordered it.
And he never came home.
Stop searching. Start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT. News9 Plus. Ahead of the curve.
तो जब हम करेंगे तो पता लग ही जाएगा. सलमान खान का करेंगे, मारेंगे या जोधपुर में मारेंगे तो पता लग जाएगा.
This is someone who is sitting inside our jails and is still very obviously and openly running and possibly the largest organized criminal operation in the country.
स्टूडेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऑफ पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी में सोपू का एक्टिंग प्रेसिडेंट टाइप भी रहा है.
He was a troublemaker, getting into fights with people, not coming to the class.
As on date, it appears that Lawrence gang is the most important, the prominent gang. Gangs here in Punjab, they are intimidated.
Today he's India's most dangerous gangster, and India's prisons are apparently no bar to how Bishnoi runs India's largest criminal empire.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT. News9 Plus. Ahead of the curve.
Welcome back. India is going the SIP route. The systematic investment plan AUM has jumped over 38% in 2023. Now, SIP's total share of all mutual funds assets is currently at 19%. A 19% surge as of November of this year from 16.6% in the start of 2023. Very interestingly, people are going for systematic investment plans more and more. That's the route people are taking. In fact, monthly SIP investments have been going up. They have risen from 8,000 crores as of January of 2021 to 17,000 crores as of November of 2023. What does that tell you about how people are investing? It tells you essentially not only people are going for mutual funds and preferring mutual funds over other assets, but also going through the SIP route.
Yeah, so it's the retailization of SIPs. Retail investors mostly go via the SIP route to invest in MFs, mutual funds. So that's what it suggests, and it has the SIP investments have been rising consistently from 8,023 crores in January 2021 to as much as 17,073 in November 2023. So that is the quantum jump within 2 years that has happened. Yeah, so it's more retail investors coming in.
Absolutely, and the total SIP AUM, asset under management, stood at 9.3 trillion rupees as of November of this year, which is a 38% jump if you compare it with what it was at the start of the calendar year. Now, since 2018, SIP AUM has surged over 19% annually, and 42% jump has been seen in 2021 alone. So 2021 perhaps a better year for people and small savings as well as systematic investment plans. Now, the rise in SIP AUM is also a result, in fact, of a sharp rally many are looking at in the equity market. Now, we remember both Nifty and Sensex jumped over 16% in 2023 alone. People are now finding SIPs and mutual funds more lucrative than what they were about 3 years ago.
Yeah, and mutual funds also are investing bigger into the bigger industries, the Nifty 50s. So more money in the hands of the people, more retail investors, more people going the SIP route. to invest in mutual funds.
All right. Very interestingly, I mean, if you look at the different categories of funds in which people have invested, it appears that debt funds have failed to keep pace. Active debt funds currently stand at about 14.1 trillion in November, which is only a tad bit higher from what it was back in 2020. There has been a decline in interest as far as debt fund is concerned. Now, that is the reading from what we are looking at as far as data from AMFI is coming in by the way of what's happening in mutual fund industry. But a very sharp increase from 16% to 19% at the end of November. This is the data for the month of November. The month of December, as we finish, we'll be bringing more data when it comes to SIPs. Interesting trend, therefore, coming in as far as systematic investment plans is concerned. A sharp increase, a sharp rise this year alone, looking better compared to the last many years. People are going the SIP and mutual funds route. But another story that is coming in by the way of credit growth. The credit growth in rural India, many reports are suggesting at this point, is stagnant. Now, the share of bank credit, when you look at data from RBI in rural India, is at 7.7% compared to a whopping 62% in metros. What does this tell you about, where is the money going as far as bank lending is concerned? There is more lending happening in metro cities, which is, I think, in line with expectation as well.
Yeah, it has increased. So, if you see the percentage of a share of rural credit, way back in 2018, it was 6.9%. In June 2023, it's 7.7%. So, margin. But in metro cities, I'm not going, I'll talk about semi-urban and urban later. Metro cities, it was 65% in 2018. It is 87%. It's a quantum jump. 87 trillion rupees went to metro cities as far as the outstanding credit goes from scheduled banks. Only 10.8 trillion went to rural areas. Semi-urban stood at 13%, rural only 7.7%, semi-urban 13%, urban 17%, and as I mentioned, metros whopping 62%. At 87.1 trillion.
All right. If we are to break down this data, Amit, and perhaps make it easier for people to understand what's happening here as far as bank credit is concerned, are banks lending more to metro cities, people living in metros, as opposed to people living in? Is it a a fraction of, or is it a factor of how much the demand is it, or is it a factor of what kind of lending pattern we are observing with banks? So banks lending more to metros means there is more demand for credit from metros, as opposed to banks trusting more with people living in metros, that their ability to pay back is perhaps far greater from people living in rural India.
A bit of both, and the knowledge dispersal with the kinds of credit available is little less, and because it is just started in rural India, so that is also another factor, and which will pick up, because rural credit is something that did not happen, was almost negligible maybe a decade or so ago. So that is also, so I like the things you mentioned, a bit of all of them. There are more people in metro cities going in for credit, banks more confident of disbursing credit to people from metros rather than from rural India. So I'll also mention even the difference between metros and urban is huge, 62% and 17%. So it is the metro cities, probably because the business is more, business opportunities are more people are going in, and banks are more confident to lending to people from these cities.
And very interestingly, you also I happen to touch on the fact that people living in metros perhaps have more access to banks, but also there is more financial awareness on what sort of banking products can we avail, and what sort of banking loan can we avail, what sort of credit opportunity lies with a person. Is the knowledge of that is perhaps more with people living in metro cities. So the fact that it's not just lower in rural India but also urban India compared to the metros is also
huge gap,
very
62 and 17, and 7% rural, semi-urban 13, urban 17. So, and a huge 62%, over 62% in metro cities. So there's a huge gap in that. It has come down a little bit, but the amount that it should have increased in rural India, I think it'll take time.
All right. So
the government needs to be, I think, much more aggressive.
Of course, much more aggressive when lending perhaps to people living in rural areas. There's a huge gap between the bank credit available to people living in metro cities and people living in rural areas. 7.7% for people in rural areas, at about 60% and over for people living in metros. But if you look at the difference between people living in metros as opposed to people living in other urban areas of the country, 17% and 62%. The gap between that is also very wide. Essentially means that people living in metro cities have more cash and credit options available to them, and banks perhaps are more likely to lend to you if you are living in a metro city today. But before we close this bulletin, a very important story that has now come in by the way of Paytm. Paytm has brought in some sort of pain to people by the end of this year. About 1,000 of its employees have been let go of. They've been fired. Now Paytm is making efforts to reduce cost. It is looking to get more into AI-driven solutions, looking to ramp up its efforts as far as its operations is concerned, and modernization and adoption of tech. But in order to do so, it needs more cash, and it is letting go of people. 1,000 people have been let go of.
Yeah. The employee costs of Paytm went up from 73% to 730 crores to 807 crores between the last two quarters, almost a jump of 10.5%. So they are basically rationalizing that. And mind you, company sources are also saying that they will be hiring as many as 15,000 people or salespersons on contract in the coming year. Most of the job cuts have happened in the retail banking, where the government laws and stringent regulations have come into play, and the focus of Paytm.
Let's spend maybe a minute to understand why the job cut. The job cut, 1,000 employees that it has let go of, or about 10% of its workforce that will be impacted, is by the virtue of that RBI circular warning NBFCs and warning banks to be wary of lending small ticket loans to people and increasing the credit risk on retail loans. So that has resulted in Paytm's books taking a beating. We know that Paytm has now withdrawn from small ticket lending. The buy now and pay later segment, those are in losses, due to which it had to let go of its workforce.
So their focus now is going to be totally on insurance broking and wealth management. So small, as you mentioned, small ticket loans, they're basically scaling it down to almost zero. They've already basically cut it down. So that. And the other factor is they're looking to save 10 to 15% of their costs by transferring operations towards artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is coming into play in the job scenario, even in fintech.
Absolutely. And there are two stories playing out here. A, the fact that many companies are now looking to restructure in order to incorporate AI into their everyday tech solutions and operations. That's number one. Number two is the startup story, and the fact that this is the biggest layoff, in fact, at the end of the year. About, more and more people, 1,000 employees let go, but this has been a continuous sort of trend over the year. About 28,000 employees have been fired from all startups across the board in 2023 alone, which is, it's in deep red when it comes to startups.
Paytm stands away from quite a few of the rest because their layoffs are not because of mismanagement. So their layoffs are because of regulation changes and their adoption of AI. And they are promising that they will be increasing their workforce in the coming year by 15,000, be it only in the form of contract employees, but they are going to increase that. So yeah, tech has seen layoffs in the last over here, and big layoffs, but Paytm, the layoffs in Paytm have not been due to mismanagement.
That is correct. But in fact, I'm looking at a report here, very interestingly. New economy companies, this report says, has laid off over 28,000 people in 2023 alone. And the major reason, as I mentioned, is restructuring by startups to conserve cash, to prioritize AI, essential operations. This is a Longhouse Consulting report pointing at very aggressive hiring, which was seen in 2021, sort of saw a downturn in 2023. So from 2021, when majority of the startups were hiring and the hiring spree was on at the peak of pandemic, that sort of saw a downturn in 2023. And as we close 2023, 28,000 people are fired across the board when it comes to startups, but 1,000 additionally from Paytm. What is to come would be interesting as far as startups
is
concerned.
It is basically a rationalization of market forces. Startups, while at one point were looking at valuations, now they are being forced to look at unit economics.
Absolutely.
So what they earn per employee, per cost per, what they earn the difference between what they earn per unit sales, they are being forced to look at it.
Of course.
So that change has happened, and therefore this rationalization, and therefore they're cutting somewhere and they will be increasing some places.
All
in
right.
the times
So
to come.
the impact of layoff perhaps we are yet to assess. Remember, the data from Longhouse Consulting is from January to September of this year. It doesn't account for the layoffs that have happened at Physicswala, at Paytm, in fact at Bizongo, Third Wave Coffee, Udaan, many of these employers who've let go of employees after September. The data does not account for that. So 28,000 fired alone between January to September of 2023. The data doesn't augur very well for people who are looking to either find a startup opportunity or to perhaps figure out an employment opportunity in one of the emerging or established startups in India. 2023 has not been very good for startup community in India. Will 2024 change that? We'll have to wait and watch out. But with that, it's a wrap on the show. Thank you very much for watching.
I recently received a friend request from Mahira Sharma. Now, we seem to have a lot of friends in common on social media, particularly from the military veterans community. But something about her didn't quite add up. So we decided to investigate. Now, honey traps as an espionage tool are nothing new. They've been around for centuries. But Pakistan's ISI, their spy agency, has been perfecting honey traps in the virtual space. Our story takes you inside Pakistan's honey trap machine.
Mahira Sharma, a young, good-looking woman in her 20s. Her Facebook profile said she was a clerk in a nationalized bank in Pune. Our editor's profile picture had an Air Force aircraft. He had several former military officers in his friends list. Mahira Sharma had 62 friends, all of them males and many of them serving and retired military and government officials. We began our investigation. We found 3 more Facebook accounts with the exact same profile picture and name. Another Facebook profile, Gauri Sharma, had the same work profile as Mahira. That confirmed our suspicion that both accounts were fake. We decided to dig further. We first called the bank. They confirmed that no one by this name worked there. We then approached 2 of their followers and asked them whether they personally knew these women. They said they had never met them. It was not clear why they had accepted the friend request.
Our investigation led us to a list of honey trappers trained in Pakistan. Pakistani intelligence operatives run these fake accounts. They have only one target: Indian men in uniform. These women are trained to speak in Indian dialects.
Indian military intelligence officials confirmed to us that Mahira Sharma was one of hundreds of fake profiles created by Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI. She was the bait for a honey trap.
Etc. We try to educate our people, but a lot of our journalists and a lot of our public professionals, etc., believe that they are not vulnerable, they have got nothing to hide. But what happens in something is, Mahira Sharma tries to approach me on LinkedIn, and if I find that she is connected to some famous editor whom I know, so my trust factor and the chance of me lowering the guard is very much there. So it is that one person, that one breach will lead to multiple other breaches. The trust factor is, oh, Mahira Sharma is friends with Sandeep Punditan, my friend. Okay, maybe she's, I take the first, and she says, Sandy said, I may not check back because Sandy is a big, busy man. So that's how it starts off.
जहाँ पे भी आपको लगेगा, उनको लगेगा कि there is a person who is susceptible to women, who's making a lot of women friends on the social media. That is where they will make a spoof account and then start luring the person. I have also got in my Twitter account. I'm only on the Twitter handle, and suddenly I have to literally report and block the particular handles. So the female will be there in a semi-nude. The beauty is, the AI works so well. How long have you looked at the photo? You just seen it and changed the screen. You've done a gaze. 2-second gaze, 3-second gaze, a minute gaze. Are you repetitively going back to that handle? Your weakness is known.
So the ISI is a professional intelligence agency, and since you said that their nation's motivation is, their raison d'etre for existing is to, seemingly defeat our nation and wrest Kashmir. That is what they openly say, and they have created a vast infrastructure to defeat this nation. And being a professional organization, they look at multiple ways to infiltrate our nation, get military information, because we are a militarily superior power. So they run these operations, and the information age, it is but natural they will create, Mahira Sharmas and try to infiltrate.
Pradeep Kurulkar was the director of Pune-based Defence Research and Development Organization. The DRDO is India's premier military R&D organization developing crucial defence equipment, including strategic missiles. In June 2020, Kurulkar received a WhatsApp message from Zara Dasgupta. Zara claimed that she was a software engineer from UK. Then the video chats began. Zara began sending nude photographs and videos to Kurulkar. Soon, she began asking for top secret information on India's defence preparedness. Kurulkar passed data on the BrahMos cruise missile and test details of a yet to be revealed Agni 6 nuclear ballistic missile. The 58-year-old scientist was entrapped.
इस वक्त की बड़ी खबर, डीआरडीओ के डायरेक्टर प्रदीप कुरूलकर गिरफ्तार हो गए हैं। उन पर पाकिस्तान इंटेलिजेंस को इन्फॉर्मेशन देने का आरोप लगा है।
Kurulkar was arrested by Indian police in May 2023. The woman who called herself Zara Dasgupta was operating from Pakistan, not the UK. There was another twist here. Kurulkar was convinced Zara was a real person. She had met him in Pune in December 2020. Police believe this yet to be identified woman was an imposter